The snowstorm was loud, strong, and wild. Jackson walked through the white hills with heavy boots, each step sinking into deep snow. His breath came out like clouds in the freezing air. He had lost connection with his team 2 days ago, and his coms were still silent. He didn't expect to find anyone alive in this frozen wasteland. But then he saw a strange glow behind a fallen tree covered in snow. He moved closer, pushing branches aside. There it was, a small silver pod, half buried. In ice, its surface cracked and steaming. The pod door was open, barely hanging. Jackson raised his pulse rifle. Just in case. Then he heard a soft sound, like someone trying to speak, but too weak to scream. Inside the pod was a girl not human, but not fully alien either. She had smooth, silver skin, long white hair tangled with frost, and large, glowing blue eyes. Her thin body was shaking, almost lifeless. She looked at him and whispered, "Human, please, make me your wife, or I will die." Jackson blinked, confused, thinking he misheard wife. He asked, stepping inside slowly. She tried to sit up, but fell forward, her arms barely moving. "I am Sorelia," she said. "And I have chosen you." He grabbed his thermal blanket and wrapped her gently. "Let's talk about that when you're not freezing to death," he muttered. She closed her eyes, as if comforted just by his voice. He carried her back to his small survival camp, a few hundred meters away. His camp was a simple dome with heating and supplies, nothing fancy, inside. He laid her near the heater, gave her warm liquid, and covered her with layers. Her skin slowly returned to a glowing silver tone. She looked peaceful now, but her earlier words stayed in his mind. "Make me your wife, or I will die." What did she mean by that? Was it cultural? Was she delusional? Hours passed, and she finally opened her eyes again. "Thank you, Jackson," she said softly. He raised an eyebrow. "How do you know my name?" "I saw you," she said, "in my vision when I was chosen to bond." Now he was really confused. "You're going to have to explain all this," he said, handing her more water. Sorelia sat up slowly, her body still weak. "My people. We have a bond system," she said. "Once we imprint on someone, if that person rejects us, our body begins to fail." Jackson stared at her, not sure whether to laugh or panic. "So, if I don't say yes, you'll die." "Yes," she whispered, "but I don't want pity. I just wanted to see you once." Before the end, he sat beside her, watching her expression. There was no trick, no acting, only sadness in her eyes. "Why me?" he asked finally. "Your spirit, your kindness. It called to me across the stars," she answered. Outside, the storm began to calm, but inside the camp, things were only beginning to stir. Sorelia reached out and touched his arm, her fingers cold but soft. "You don't have to love me," she said. "Only accept me, just once." For the bond to hold, Jackson didn't respond, his mind racing. Could this really be true? Or was it something else? She closed her eyes again, whispering, "Even your rejection is better than silence." He didn't know what to say. He just sat there, quietly holding her hand, feeling the warmth return to her skin. Something in him told him this was more than chance, and that night, under the red emergency lights and soft hum of the heater, a bond deeper than logic began to form between a human lost in snow and an alien girl who had chosen death over separation. Jackson couldn't sleep that night, even though Sorelia lay peacefully nearby. Wrapped in blankets and bathed in warm light, his mind was anything but calm. He stared at the icy window of the dome shelter, trying to understand what had just happened. A stranger, an alien, had begged him to be her husband. She would die. No training on Earth had prepared him for this. Not even the survival drills in extreme environments included the phrase, "bond," or "she perishes." Sorelia stirred and opened her eyes. Jackson noticed her skin was glowing faintly again, a soft silver light pulsing like a heartbeat. Are you feeling better? He asked, still unsure of everything. She nodded, her white hair slipping over her shoulders like threads of snow. Yes, because you stayed, she said softly. The bond isn't complete, but it hasn't broken yet. Jackson leaned forward. Curious, but cautious. Tell me more, he said. What is this bond? And why me? Ceralia's fingers gently tapped against her chest, right where her heart should be. In my culture, she began. When we reach adulthood, we are shown visions from the elders' visions of the one our soul is tied to. Jackson tilted his head, listening, like a soulmate. He asked, similar, she said, but for us, it's physical and spiritual. If the bond is not accepted, the rejection causes sickness. Our minds break first, then the body. Jackson felt a knot in his chest. So when you saw me in that vision, it made this bond start. She answered. I searched for you, followed the signature of your mind, your energy, your presence. He shook his head, still overwhelmed. But what if I never came here? I would have died in my sleep, she whispered, believing you never existed. Silence filled the shelter for a moment. Only the soft beeping of the heater and the hum of the generator could be heard. Then Ceralia looked up at him again, her eyes glowing softly. I know you didn't ask for this, she said. But my body has already begun to change for you. Jackson blinked. What do you mean change? She pulled her sleeve back slightly, revealing glowing patterns on her forearm. Marks that looked like stars orbiting a moon and pulsed in time with his heartbeat. Our biology adapts to match our chosen, she said. I'm aligning with your world, your chemistry. Jackson stood slowly, trying to make sense of it all. This is a lot, Ceralia, he said. I don't even know you. I understand, she said gently. That's why I asked, not demanded. She looked down, her voice trembling. If you say no, I will not beg again. I will simply fade. Jackson's thoughts spun like a storm. Was this love? No, not yet. But something about her voice, her fear. Her honesty tugged at something buried deep in him. He had lost people, seen too much war, too much silence. Now, here was someone who didn't ask for money, power, or even safety, just presence. Then suddenly, the radar near the door beeped. Jackson's heart jumped. He checked the screen, expecting wildlife, but instead saw motion signals. A ship had landed nearby, a known ID signature. Someone was out there. He quickly turned to Ceralia. Did anyone follow you? Her face went pale. They must have tracked my crash. The bond breakers. Jackson loaded his weapon, his military training kicking in. Who are they? Hunters, she said. They were sent by rival clans to make sure I never bonded outside our kind. She stood up slowly, still weak, but fire now burned in her glowing eyes. If they find us, they'll kill you first. Jackson nodded once, firm and ready. Then we make sure they don't find us, as they prepared to leave the shelter. Ceralia reached for his hand. Her fingers were warmer now, stronger. You don't have to accept me yet, she said. Just don't let me die without trying. Jackson squeezed her hand. Looking into her eyes, let's get through this first, he said. Then we'll figure out what kind of bond this really is. They stepped into the snow together, the stars above, cold and watching, behind them. Their footprints faded with every gust of wind, but ahead of them, something unseen was forming. Not just a bond, but a purpose. Jackson moved fast through the snow, pulling Ceralia behind him as the wind howled louder than before. She was cold, but her steps had grown stronger, more determined behind them. Black dots moved in the distant shadows that didn't belong to the storm. They're coming closer, Jackson said, checking the radar clipped to his wrist. Ceralia looked back, her voice tense. They are not hunters, they are enforcers. Same difference, Jackson muttered. What do they want? To To erase the bond, she whispered. Even if they have to erase us. Jackson gritted his teeth. Tightening his grip on his weapon, his mind flashed back to the war zones he once fought in. But this wasn't Earth, and she wasn't just. And Alicia was something else now, something deeper. They reached a sharp ridge where the land dipped into a canyon filled with ancient alien trees. Twisting trunks and glowing leaves gave the forest a ghostly light. Jackson led her down a path, careful not to leave easy tracks. The sound of engines roared behind them, small flyers scanning from above. Sorelia grabbed his sleeve. We must find cover now. They slipped into the shadow of a broken arch, made of crystal and stone, clearly built by a forgotten race. But still strong enough to hide them. Jackson crouched low, heart pounding. Sorelia pressed close, her breath warm, against his ear. They will sense my energy soon, she said. They were trained to find bonded ones. Then we changed the plan, Jackson said, looking up at the ancient structure. He pulled a silver cube from his pocket and pressed a sequence on it. A small EMP charged something he hoped he'd never have to use. It would fry electronics in a small area, but alert everyone nearby. He placed it near the entrance and whispered, "We move when I say." Sorelia touched his face gently, her fingers glowing faintly. "If you die protecting me," she said, "I will end myself." Moments later, Jackson grabbed her hand, firm but calm. "I don't plan on dying, and I don't plan on letting you die either." He waited as the shadows grew closer. A figure floated down near the forest line, dark armor, glowing red eyes. The enforcer looked like death carved in steel. Jackson watched the scanners on his arm, counted 3. No for units nearby. Too many for a straight fight, but maybe enough for a trick. The moment the enforcer stepped near the crystal arch, Jackson hit the switch. The EMP blasted in silence, only visible as a ripple of light. All scanners, drones, and armor in the area flickered, powered down. He didn't wait. He pulled Sorelia and ran deeper into the alien forest. The trees seemed to shift with them, their leaves humming low. Jackson noticed that wherever Sorelia stepped, the trees bent slightly. "They recognize you," he said, almost stunned. "These forests were part of my world once." She replied, "Long ago, before we lost them, the wind died down inside the forest, replaced by a stillness that felt almost sacred." They stopped under a canopy of bioluminescent vines. Jackson checked his gear, only half working now, but his weapon still had charge. Sorelia sat beside him, her glow flickering. She looked at him and asked, "Why did you not run when you learned I was bonded to you?" Jackson sighed, leaning against the tree. "Because you looked at me like I was someone worth something," he said. "Everyone else back home just saw a broken soldier. Another name in the system. But you," he paused, "you looked at me like I mattered." She smiled softly, touching her chest where the glowing markings had spread. "I don't just see you," she whispered. "I feel you in every part of me." Before he could reply, a soft hum filled the air again. The EMP had worn off, and the hunters were back online. Jackson stood, readying his rifle. Sorelia stood beside him, her eyes now fully gold. "I can't fight like you," she said, "but I can protect you in other ways." He nodded once. "Then let's be hunted together." And they moved as one. Not just allies, not just strangers, but something new, something the galaxy would learn to fear. The cold bit harder as they climbed. Jackson's breath came out in clouds, fogging the visor of his helmet. He helped Sorelia up a rocky incline, her steps slow but steady behind them. The forest burned in streaks of orange where enforcer drones had searched and blasted. They had escaped for now, but not for long. The mountains stood tall, silent, and cruel. White peaks touched the sky, hiding old secrets in the snow. "This ridge," Jackson said, pointing up ahead. "There's an old survey cave built by the first Earth scouts. Sorelia nodded, her silver skin glowing faintly in the moonlight. I can feel the stone remembering, she said. This place knew. Peace once, the path grew steeper. And they used ropes tied between trees and stone pillars. Sorelia's strength was not human, but it was fading. Her bond sickness was slowly returning. Jackson saw her wince, but say nothing. He paused and placed a hand on her back. Don't. Pretend to be strong for me, he whispered. I'm not pretending, she replied. I'm just afraid of what happens if I stop. They reached a ledge that opened into a hidden cave. Jackson scanned the entrance, wiped off the frost-covered panel, and entered an old human access code. With a soft hiss, the door opened, revealing a dark but warm interior. Power cells still hummed low after all these years. They stepped inside and collapsed near the generator. Jackson quickly lit a heat panel and began boiling water from snow. Sorelia sat beside him, shivering quietly. Her glow dimmed to a soft pulse, barely visible. He handed her the warm water pouch. She drank slowly, then looked up at him. I don't have much time, she whispered. Jackson frowned. Why? I thought the sickness slowed when we stayed close. Sorelia nodded slowly. It did, but the bond was meant to be sealed under starlight, in calm spirit, not during fear, not during war. She reached for his hand. Weak, but sincere. I need to complete it soon, or I will sleep and not wake. Jackson looked into her eyes, and something in him finally cracked. He wasn't ready for love, but he was done with loss. He had seen too many people die, leave, fade, and now she was here, soft, honest, and fading just like the rest. He placed her hand against his chest, where his heart beat strong. If I accept you, he said slowly, what does it mean? She looked at him, silver tears in her eyes. It means you allow me into your soul. She said, just once, no promise, no future, only now. Outside, the wind howled again, but inside, silence spoke louder. Jackson nodded and said, then. Take it. Sorelia leaned forward, their foreheads touching. A faint golden light rose between them, curling like smoke, wrapping around their skin. Symbols shimmered along their arms, old language of stars and life. Jackson felt a rush, memories not his, visions of alien suns, laughter in fields, heartbreak under two moons. Her story entered him, and his strength entered her. She gasped and collapsed into his arms, breathing easier. The sickness paused, and her glow returned, not strong, but steady, alive. Jackson held her tight, not sure what had just happened, but knowing deep inside it mattered more than anything else in his life. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed from the cave wall motion sensors. Jackson stood, weapon raised. A shadow passed across the narrow cave entrance. One of the enforcers had tracked them. Even here, Jackson cursed under his breath and shut down the heat lamp. The cave went dark, only lit by Sorelia's dim glow. She looked at him with calm eyes. If we must die, she whispered. I am glad I found you first. Jackson smirked. We're not dying yet. I've still got a few tricks. He moved quickly to set a trap-hand old mining charge placed on a shaky column near the cave door. He led Sorelia deeper into a side tunnel. Just in time, the enforcer entered, heavy steps echoing. Jackson triggered the charge. The cave shook, rocks collapsed, and a wall of stone sealed the tunnel behind them. Silence returned. Sorelia leaned against the wall, breathing heavy. Jackson lit a backup lamp and checked her pulse. Still alive, stronger than before. She smiled up at him. You accepted me. I did, he replied, sitting beside her. But not because you asked. She tilted her head, curious. I accepted because I wanted to, he said. And because I'd rather die with you than live alone, and for the first time since they met. Sorelia laughed, a real warm laugh that echoed in the mountain cave, a sound that made the cold feel far, far away. The cave walls shimmered with soft echoes. Light danced across the crystals embedded in stone. Jackson sat beside Sorelia in silence, watching her rest. The glow from her skin had returned, but something was still missing. He could feel it, like an unfinished heartbeat in the air. Sorelia stirred, her eyes opening slowly. She looked at him, then around the cave's depths. "This place," she whispered, "is older than your world's first memory." Jackson raised a brow. "You know this cave." She nodded, her fingers brushing across the wall. "The ancients built this place for bonding," she said. A sacred chamber only used once every 1,000 cycles. Jackson felt a strange chill. "But not from the cold. You brought us here." "On purpose," he said. "No," she replied. "But perhaps the bond guided us." She stood slowly, her feet bare on the glowing stone. "I need to complete the ritual." She said, "If I wait any longer, the bond will begin to unravel." "What does the ritual involve?" Jackson asked. Standing up, Sorelia looked at him with serious eyes. "You must accept my essence. Allow me to feel yours," she said. "No lies, no walls." Jackson hesitated. "Sounds intense." "It is," she said. "But it's also beautiful." She stepped into the center of the chamber where ancient carvings circled the floor. The lines glowed faint blue. Reacting to her presence, she knelt and placed both palms on the ground. Suddenly, a ring of starlight rose around her. Slow and silent, Jackson watched, unsure whether to move closer. She looked up at him and said, "If you step into the light, the ritual begins." He took a deep breath, dropped his weapon, and walked into the circle. The air shifted, warmer, thicker. The light wrapped around them like a veil. The moment he entered, he felt a pressure in his chest, not painful, just heavy. Then his mind flooded with images, not memories of Earth, but her memories. He saw her as a child. Watching her people leave one by one, he saw her training under dark skies, learning languages, seeing his face in visions. He felt her fear, her hope, her longing. It was overwhelming, yet honest. She reached out and placed a hand over his heart. Jackson gasped. This time, it was his own memories that poured out. His mother's laughter, his squad mates screaming in. Fire, the face of a friend he lost in the last war. His own regret, hidden love, and endless loneliness. She didn't flinch, she didn't judge, she just held him tighter. The light grew brighter. Spinning faster, the walls of the cave echoed with soft humming music older than time. And then, the final pulse, their glows merged, gold and silver. Mixing like sun and moon, the circle faded, leaving them standing in silence. Breathless and changed, Jackson stumbled back slightly. Overwhelmed, Sorelia caught him. Smiling gently, "It is done," she whispered. "You are in me, and I in you." Jackson didn't fully understand what had just happened, but he knew one thing: he no longer felt hollow. Something inside him had been filled. Not by force, not by magic, but by truth. Sorelia sat down, her body trembling with fatigue. "The ritual gives. But it also takes," she said. "What do you mean?" he asked, kneeling beside her. "It pulls out pain memory. Scars, so we can carry them together now." Jackson looked at his arm and saw faint, glowing markings. The same ones from the ritual. They now lived in his skin. "I guess I'm not just human anymore," he said. No, Sorelia smiled. "You are something more." Their moment was interrupted by a distant rumble. The rocks above shook slightly. Jackson's radar beeped. It was weak, but alive again. He stood, alert. "They're still looking for us," said. "And now they're close." Sorelia stood slowly, her strength returning. "The bond has made me stronger," she said, her voice calm. "Then let's make sure they never forget what we are," Jackson replied. He helped her gather supplies from the old storage chamber, weapons, armor, and old field tech left behind by explorers long gone. As they stepped out of the cave into the freezing dawn, the light behind them faded, and the sacred chamber sealed itself once again. Two beings walked into the wind, one human, one alien. Now bound beyond blood or species, and the galaxy would never be the same. The snow around the mountains began to melt as morning sun touched the peaks, but fire came before warmth. Smoke curled into the sky just past the ridge, dark and bitter. Jackson spotted it first through his lens, a line of flame moving slowly and natural, forced. "They're burning the forest to trap us," he said, voice low. Sorelia stood beside him, her cloak pulled tightly around her silver skin. "They mean to flush us into the open," she said. Jackson narrowed his eyes. "They're trying to corner prey, but we're not prey anymore." Below, 4 enforcers moved in a line, their boots melting snow with each step. Jackson had counted 7 in total, spread across the slope. He only had 1 energy clip left. No backup, no team, no hope. Least not the kind he used to believe in. Sorelia touched the stone wall, breathing deeply. "The bond gives more than love," she said. "It gives memory, history, power, if accepted." Jackson turned to her. "What kind of power?" She looked at him and answered with calm fire in her voice. "The kind that answers pain with purpose." They ran along the ridge, moving fast. Jackson set up trap-sold combat techniques with buried charges and signal loops. Sorelia moved like a shadow, quiet and graceful. Her glow shifted stronger now, no longer dim like before. She had become something new, something radiant. The first explosion came at noon. 1 enforcer stepped into a trap and vanished in a ball of blue fire. The others paused, confused. Then came the second, this time shattering their formation. Jackson watched from a ledge, whispering, to down. But they adapted, quickly switching to heat vision, scanning high and wide. They found the cave entrance and launched a pulse missile. The ancient mountain shook, stones fell. Jackson and Sorelia dodged the impact. Rolling behind a stone wall, he winced, his arm bleeding. Sorelia reached over and placed her glowing palm against his wound. Golden light surged through the cut, sealing it gently. He looked at her, stunned. "You just healed me," he said. "No," she said softly. "I shared your pain." They looked at each other, closer now than ever before, not just bonded, but built for each other, bone, blood, and breath. Jackson stood slowly, rifle in hand. "Time to end this," he said. They moved downhill, weaving through trees still untouched by fire. Sorelia whispered words in her own language, each phrase lighting runes on the trees. The forest responded. Vines curled, branches thickened. A natural barrier grew in seconds, blocking one path completely. Jackson lured the remaining enforcers toward a narrow rock bridge. He stood on the far side, weapon raised. "You want her?" He shouted, "Come and bleed for it." The first enforcer stepped onto the bridge, confident. Then Jackson detonated the ice layer beneath it. The rock crumbled, and the enforcer fell screaming into the abyss below. Only 2 remained, but they charged without fear. Sorelia stepped forward before Jackson could stop her. She raised her arms, light swirling around her body. The snow at her feet turned to steam. The remaining enforcers froze, not from fear, but from recognition. They whispered her name like it was a curse. The flame-bound air. She didn't speak, only raised her hand. A pulse of pure light shot forward, slamming into the enemy like a comet. Both fell silent, still broken. Jackson stared, stunned. "You didn't tell me you were royalty," he said. "I didn't think it mattered," she replied. The fire from the forest had stopped. Only smoke remained, rising like a flag of surrender. Jackson dropped his rifle and sat on a rock, breath heavy. Sorelia joined him, leaning her head on his shoulder. I was ready to die before I met you, she said. Now I want to live, and I want it with you. Jackson looked up at the sky. The smoke parting to reveal stars above. He took her hand, kissed her fingers gently. No one ever fought for me like you just did, he said. And no one ever looked at me the way you do, she replied. They sat in silence as the flames cooled, two souls no longer lost, no longer alone. Just one choice remained, now what kind of future they would build from the ashes. The stars were bright that night, even through the cold mountain air. Jackson and Sorelia stood side by side on the ridge, watching the sky above. No more drones flew overhead, no more shadows moved behind trees. The enforcers were gone, and for the first time in days, the world was silent. Jackson touched the bandage. On his arm, now more a memory than a wound, Sorelia had healed him with her bond. With her strength, with something far deeper than science. He looked at her, and she smiled softly. Her eyes still glowed. But no longer out of sickness or desperation now. They shined with peace. I never thought I'd survive this planet, Jackson said quietly. I never thought I'd survive without you, she replied. They shared a quiet moment, wind brushing through their hair. Then Sorelia pointed to the sky. There, she said, that star is my homeworld. It used to feel so far, so unreachable. Jackson looked at the distant sparkle. Do you want to go back? He asked. No, she said. I want to make a new home with you. A beacon flashed behind them. Jackson's long-range signal had finally reached Earth Command. He activated the flare, sending a blue burst high into the sky. Hours passed before the rescue ship arrived, its engines roaring through the clouds like thunder. When it landed, armored soldiers stepped out, weapons ready. They weren't sure if Jackson was still alive or if he had turned. Sorelia stood proudly beside him as the soldiers approached. Their eyes widened when they saw her, an alien woman in human gear, bonded with the missing scout. State your name. One of them barked. Private Jackson Holt, Scout Division. Still breathing, he answered, and her. She's my wife, Jackson said calmly. The soldiers looked confused, some even amused. But when Sorelia stepped forward and raised her hand, they stopped laughing. My name is Sorelia Varnthal, she said, heir to the flame-bonded. Bearer of the old blood, one soldier whispered. That's not possible. Jackson smiled. It is now. Back at the Earth's outpost, Sorelia was questioned, scanned and watched for days, but no one could deny the truth. She had no weapons, no hate, and no demands, only her calm voice and glowing hands. The doctors were amazed. Her biology was already adapting to Earth's gravity and food. Her bond with Jackson had changed her, made her more human without losing her own nature. The scientists called it a miracle. The officers called it a problem. But Jackson called it what it truly was, love. In time, the council allowed her to stay, not as a prisoner, not as a guest, but as a registered citizen under Earth protection. It was the first time in history an alien had been legally accepted through bonding. When the announcement was made, cameras flashed, reporters rushed in, but Sorelia stayed silent. Her only words were whispered to Jackson that night. None of them matter, only you do. They were given a quiet home near the training base. A small cabin surrounded by pine trees where snow still fell in soft layers. Jackson trained recruits. In mountain survival, Sorelia taught him her language, her customs, and how to listen to stars. They shared coffee in the mornings and stories at night. No grand palace, no throne, just warmth, peace, and each other. One evening, while sitting by the fire, Jackson handed her a small black box. Inside was a simple silver ring. Sorelia looked at him, surprised. I thought we were already bonded, she said. We are, he replied. But this is Earth's way. She took the ring, slid it onto her finger, and whispered, Then I am yours in every world. Their story became legend told across colonies, repeated in whispers about the alien woman who pleaded for love, and the human who gave it without asking why. Not because he was a hero, not because she was powerful, but because they saw each other, and that was enough. As the stars turned slowly above their quiet home, Sorelia lay beside Jackson, resting her head on his chest. "You once said you didn't believe in fate," she whispered. "I don't," he replied, pulling her close. "But I believe in you, and in the stillness of that sacred night, a wife of the stars held her human husband, and neither ever felt alone again.